This video is sponsored by Huel, more on them in a moment. There are a whole host of new Nintendo Switch 2 news and updates I want to cover with you all today, starting with an interesting stat that Nintendo revealed from their latest investors briefing that does actually have a number of people online discussing whether or not Nintendo is attracting a new user base to the Switch 2, like how many of these people that are buying this console right at launch are just brand new to the Switch ecosystem versus how many are coming over from owning a Switch for multiple years. And we have the exact data on that, and I think it's worth discussing in a little bit more detail than what is conveyed just by reading the surface level headline. Then we have Pokemon Legends ZA Mega Dimension release date officially confirmed. I actually have an issue with this release date. We may make a whole separate video on it, but I want to share my thoughts around the new DLC details, break down when you can play it, and just highlight what to expect with it overall. Next up, good news for Sonic Racing CrossWorlds fans. If you were waiting for the Switch 2 release of this game, we now have the official date, in addition to the details on how you can upgrade from the Switch 1 version if you did happen to pick that one up. And next up, an interesting article from an analyst firm that has done some research on unique IP that would be poised and ready for a very good selling remake, let's say. And there's some interesting games on the list, one of which I very much want to see happen that I want to highlight with you all. And finally, we will close it out with the more or less now official confirmation that the Legend of Zelda movie is actually in production officially. It's being filmed, and Nintendo has some big plans for their movie side of things, and I want to highlight the Legend of Zelda one because it is definitely by far and away the one I'm most nervous about and looking forward to at the end of the day. So we'll break all of this down right after a quick word from today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Huel, and I've been a big fan of this brand and have actually been incorporating them into my daily routine for the last 4 or 5 months now at this point, and they are really a lifesaver when it comes to being busy and on the go, but still needing to hit your nutrition targets. Because with Huel's Black Edition ready to drink, it's not a protein shake, it's a full meal in a bottle that actually tastes good. My favorite flavor by far is strawberry banana. I just cannot get enough of it. It's smooth, a little sweet, and surprisingly filling. Each bottle gives you around 400 calories and 40 grams of protein, and all the nutrients you'd get from a full balanced meal. Before Huel, I'd either skip meals or grab fast food that left me feeling sluggish. With Huel, I grab a bottle from the fridge and I'm good to go in seconds. No prep, no cleanup, which really comes in handy when you're multitasking most of the day like I am. Plus, when you break it down, it's about $4.83 per bottle, which is way cheaper than any takeout or energy drink run. For the price of coffee and a sandwich, you are getting 12 full meals per box. So if you're looking to make your day easier and healthier, try Huel Black Edition ready to drink. Use my code SunbroNation at Huel.com/SunbroNation to get 15% off your first order. Again, that's Huel.com/SunbroNation. Big thank you to Huel for sponsoring today's video. And I want to first kick this off right over at My Nintendo News, where you can see the headline that actually has some people talking online. We'll break this down, but Nintendo says 84% of Switch 2 owners upgraded from the original Switch. Nintendo has provided some insights into the Nintendo Switch in its latest financial report. One of the many interesting aspects was that the Kyoto-based company says that 84% of Nintendo Switch 2 owners transferred from the original Nintendo Switch system, which is what the company had hoped would happen. Here's some more insights from the latest report, and we'll get to those bullet points in just a moment, but I actually want to point out Krista Yang, you may know from Kit and Krista, she had this take on it, which I actually get what she means and why she's saying this, but I do want to break it down. So I found this chart from Nintendo to be pretty misleading. What it actually means is 84% of people who bought a Switch 2 had an original Switch. Original Switch sold 154 million, and Switch 2's current sales are just over 10 million. This means 5.5 of original Switch owners have upgraded so far. So I wanted to clarify that, because if you do just read it, 84% of Switch 2 players have transitioned from the Nintendo Switch. You might think that like 84% of the entire base upgraded to Nintendo Switch 2. That's not actually what Nintendo's saying here, but as Krista points out, they probably could have worded this quite a bit better for this particular slide. But rather, it is kind of explained if you look at the more detailed breakdown. Not only early adopters, but consumers who started playing Nintendo Switch at various points of its life cycle have also transitioned to Nintendo Switch 2. And you have here players who transitioned from Nintendo Switch. That's 84% of Switch 2 sales came from people who already had existing Nintendo accounts linked to Nintendo Switch systems, and 16% of the console sales were brand new purchases. You also have a breakdown of the adoption time, so whether or not you bought the Switch 1 in 2017, of course, the hardcorest of hardcore Nintendo fans are definitely the ones that bought a Switch 1 in launch year and also bought a Switch 2 in launch year. That's the biggest majority of the breakdown. But then you have 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021 all looking, pretty similar. Definitely starts to fall off as you get into 2023 and 2024, and of course 2025. If you just bought a Switch, you're probably not going out to buy a Switch 2. But I do find this interesting because with the argument online that maybe only the hardcorest of hardcore fans are out there going out and buying a Switch 2 right now, this graph kind of breaks that down, that's not actually a factual way to look at it, because 16% of people are brand new to Nintendo's entire ecosystem. And while that's not a massive number, it is still brand new consumers that did not have any kind of registered Nintendo account to an original Nintendo Switch. Now, maybe they created a new account, and I believe that's how Nintendo is tracking this data, through Nintendo account, if it rolled forward or not. 16% right at the console launch is still a pretty sizable number of new users, especially when you stop and think about the fact that this is over 10 million units shipped, and likely the vast majority of those, of course, sold to end consumers. So for the kind of numbers that Nintendo's posted here in the launch of the Switch 2 generation, it seems clear to me that they're doing a pretty good split of getting the existing base to upgrade, but also attracting some new players. And just the fact that we have these sales conversations right now and the users transitioning from old Switches to new Switches conversations, and we haven't talked about at all yet the confirmation of any mainline 3D Mario game for the Switch 2, any mainline Zelda game that's 3D of any kind, really anything exclusive to Switch 2 in the Zelda franchise, other than the spin-off, of course, with Hyrule Warriors, which is a ton of fun, but let's be real, it doesn't have the same selling power as mainline Zelda does. And we have series like Animal Crossing that are getting new game updates, which we'll go into kind of what Nintendo's doing with some of that in-depth and individual videos coming up, because I actually think they deserve individual videos. But you think about the kind of numbers that Nintendo is posting here right at the launch of the console and breaking every video game console sales record before it, but also still having all these big franchises in reserve ready to go at some point in the future. I mean, that is pretty impressive. They're really kicking it off with Mario Kart World being a massive title, obviously, but then Donkey Kong Bonanza, it got the same love and attention as 3D Mario, but it didn't really get the same kind of household recognition that Mario gets in terms of the mass appeal. And I'm just excited to see where things go from here, because when you think about Pokemon Gen 10, Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, Smash Bros, like just that alone, think about what that's going to really do to create a lot of interest for people to upgrade from their existing Switch user base, which is still very active right now at 150 plus million units sold. Plus you have new users coming into the ecosystem at about 16% so far. And I found this one kind of fascinating as we talk about the early point of the life cycle of Switch 2. Okay, moving on from here, we have brand new details for Pokemon Legends ZA DLC, which is known as Mega Dimensions. You can see right over at VGC, Pokemon Legends ZA Mega Dimension release date confirmed. New Mega Evolutions and returning Pokemon have been confirmed. You have, in a new trailer released on Thursday, the Pokemon Company confirmed that the DLC will be available on December 10th. The new DLC will focus on the mythical Pokemon Hoopa, but will also see the return of several Pokemon from across the franchise and the new Mega Evolutions. And then you have the trailer, which of course we'll have on screen in a moment, but I want to highlight some of the details here. The Pokemon Company has confirmed that for the first time in a main series Pokemon game, that the level 100 cap, which has been in place for 30 years, will be lifted. This is massive. The new trailer for the DLC has revealed that Pokemon with levels so far exceeding 100, I believe I read online, the cap is 150. It may not be in this article, but I'll correct it on screen if not with text, but I do believe that it's going to be 150. The story will see the player encounter a Pokemon trainer named Ansha and her partner Pokemon Hoopa. Distortions have appeared across the city with the help of Hoopa. Players will visit these distortions to uncover the mystery. This DLC will also see many fan favorite Pokemon returning, including Cubone. New Mega Evolutions included in there as well, with them highlighting a few, but I want to get into kind of my initial thoughts on this. Now, first of all, the DLC, it looks fun. It looks great. I'm going to enjoy my time with it, I am sure, and I'm really enjoying my time with Legends ZA. Don't get me wrong. I'm not one of these people that thinks it's just the biggest scam in the world and the worst game or piece of software ever released. I actually think the game is a lot of fun, but it definitely has its fair share of valid complaints, like the lack of texture quality and depth to buildings, and the whole thing kind of taking place in a city. Like, that does get repetitive at the end of the day, in my opinion. But this DLC is out December 10th, and now I'm not going to go full into my thoughts on this because I do think I may make a dedicated video, but that is a very quick turnaround from, of course, the October 16th launch date of this game. Just a couple months later, it's a $30 DLC expansion. When DLC is something that you truly need more development time for and it couldn't be fit into the game, that is one thing. If we saw this release in late February, like was, we saw some posts suggesting it would be, which is kind of more what I was expecting, it wouldn't have felt as much like the Pokemon Company just held the content out of the game, but that very much does feel like this with this kind of turnaround. And, you got to call a spade a spade. This is not a consumer friendly thing to do, to have all this content ready to go, a whole additional expansion with tons of mega evolutions and tons of extra content. But it's not there in the base game, but it is there 2 months later, and it's a full $30 in addition to an already $70 game. Like, I get the complaints around that, and I have my own complaints around that. I don't like that look at all. And I hope that that's not like a standard thing that we see. I do know that Pokemon games tend to get DLC. They tend to get them later on because, of course, you had to go develop all that stuff in addition to it. When DLC actually needs the development time and adds content to the game, that's one thing. It's another thing whenever it's like kind of sold up front and held back a couple months after release. Not a fan whatsoever of that. That said, I am very much overall enjoying my time with Legends EA in the base game right now. I do not know if I will get this DLC at or around launch because it's really going to come down to how I feel at the end of my Legends EA run through, and we'll kind of make the decision from then. Okay, moving on next, we have Switch 2 version of Sonic Racing CrossWorlds gets a release date and Switch upgrade path pricing. The Switch 2 upgrade pack costs $10, but it's only $5 for the first week. So you might want to know this if you bought Sonic Racing CrossWorlds on your original Nintendo Switch. The Switch 2 version of the game will be available digitally on Switch 2 on Thursday, December 4th. It's priced at $69.99, so that is a $10 increase from the Switch 1 version. This will then be followed by a physical release in early 2026, the release date for which has still to be confirmed. This physical release will contain a full base game on the cartridge, Sega says. So that is at least a positive from what we've seen Sega do so far. They've very much been in the game keycard realm up to this point in time. This is also a higher price tag game, so maybe it's tied to that. The players who already own the Switch version of Sonic Racing CrossWorlds will be able to upgrade to the Switch version for about $10, but for the first week it'll be discounted. And so you just have essentially a $5 price instead of $10. So basically, if you do own the Switch 1 version of this game, you probably want to pick it up in that first week if you're planning on upgrading to the Switch 2 now or anytime in the future, because you can purchase the upgrade pack for just $5 in that first week. So if you bought the physical edition for Nintendo Switch 1, it's $60. You spend $65 and you get the Switch 2 version. And in fact, I believe this is both for physical and digital. That's one way to technically get the game $5 cheaper at release. You just had to start out with the Switch 1 version, and now you can upgrade it via backwards compatibility and everything with the Switch 2, providing it works that way for the physical cartridge. You may want to research that a little bit more online before you do it. But I personally am happy to see an upgrade path from Sega. We have games currently like Sonic X Shadow Generations that just does not have an upgrade path, and they haven't gone back and added one. So when you can purchase a game on Switch 1 and get it upgraded to Switch 2, and it's coming from Sega as the publisher, that is the right kind of support we want to see, and actually something that I think, this racing game, if you want a more traditional Mario Kart type of game, and I know we have a lot of them in the early Switch 2 generation, this one kind of scratches that itch for a lot of traditional Mario Kart fans that weren't a fan of intermission stages, and you want everything to be a little bit more just how it was in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, but with, of course, Sega's roster of characters as opposed to Nintendo. Very up the alleyway if you're, itching to play some of that stuff. So look into that one. Upgrade pack and release date for Switch 2 now confirmed, which is nice. Still no word on the physical on cartridge Switch 2 version, though. That'll be early next year at some point. Okay, moving on next. An interesting article that outlines maybe some franchises and IP that we could see potentially remade in the future. At least, according to these analysts, these games would sell well if we do see them come back. So you can see here also at VGC, IP holders are sitting on a wealth of content. Analyst firm lists 18 games ripe for a remake or remaster success. Ampere has identified titles likely to succeed based on its data and research. And you have here earlier this week, Ampere stated that video game consumers spent twice as much on remakes as remasters in the last 2 years. According to its research, video game remakes and remasters released across 2024 and 2025 attracted 72.4 million players across Xbox, PlayStation, and Steam, with these consumers spending some $1.4 billion on premium full games and microtransactions. Now in a presentation discussing the subject of remakes and remasters further, Ampere senior analyst Katie Holt has listed 18 games that should sell well were they to be remade or remastered based on the firm's analysis of the market and consumer behaviors and attitudes. Holt noted that IP holders are currently sitting on a wealth of content ripe for remakes and remasters, and stressing that the list isn't exclusive, identified the following games as potential candidates. And so remake. Now, this is a big thing too that kind of their previous article referenced. Remakes are getting a lot more traction than remasters, although remasters are getting some traction. Remakes is definitely a more interesting one to people, which I hope we are getting with Ocarina of Time soon, but you can see one other game that we probably know we're going to get to in a moment. Remake, Assassin's Creed, Chrono Trigger. We'll skip the one that I want to talk about for a minute. Fallout, Rayman Origins, Resident Evil 5, Uncharted Drake's Fortune, remasters, Batman Arkham Origins, Bloodborne. That will absolutely break the internet if we ever see that happen. Bully, Dragon Age Origins, Elder Scrolls, Morrowind, Fallout New Vegas, Red Dead Redemption 2, which we might be getting some kind of remaster of soon, it sounds like. And remake or remaster, God of War, the original. I would absolutely buy that day one. Assassin's Creed 4, Black Flag, Far Cry, and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which, we will be talking about Ocarina of Time and all the different details pointing to that type of remake down the pipeline in a future video. But The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, I found interesting to be on this list because I do think that this is one that when you look at the 2D Zelda cycle, where we do get remakes and remasters and 2D releases for the Zelda franchise, this one makes the most sense at this point in time to do. Now, I know A Link Between Worlds was very much a love letter and inspired and basically set in the same world as A Link to the Past. It is still not A Link to the Past, and at the end of the day, it has a different story, it has different things happening, it has different mechanics and items overall. Like, it is not A Link to the Past. So a true remake, Link's Awakening style, but maybe with a different art direction, maybe with the same art direction, but that kind of playthrough experience of A Link to the Past, I think would be a huge hit with fans, and I think it would be excellent. And obviously, Ocarina of Time, I mean, everybody, if we get a remake, all the Zelda fans are going to eat that one up in a big way. And I very much hope that we see it. So to close this out with a final little bit of Zelda news. If you can't tell, I'm very excited about the prospect of the Zelda film in 2027, but I'm also nervous about it, which I'll get into in a minute. Zelda movie changed to in production, and it's filmed in Wellington, New Zealand. So you have the Legend of Zelda live action movie is Nintendo's next big movie after the Super Mario Galaxy movie, with both certain to be sure hits at the cinema. The Film and Television Industry Alliance has changed the status of the movie from pre-production to in production, and the location where it is being filmed is the gorgeous Wellington, New Zealand. The film's shoot date was yesterday, according to the FTIA, and it's set to finish on April 7th, if there's no delays, of course. The Legend of Zelda movie is set to arrive in cinemas on the 7th of May, 2027, and this is the official post in question. Shout outs to, I believe Mike Odyssey was one of the first ones to spot this and start sharing it online. They may have them sourced here, they may not with the status thing, but anyway, regardless, this is an exciting piece of information. It's essentially confirmation that we're going to start to learn more about the cast one way or another, because in the movie world, things do actually leak. People take photos, people know people that are in the movie, and word eventually spreads. And there are also these whole movie industry leakers, like we keep up with video game leakers and their reliability and track record and who you should pay attention to or not. The movie world has all of that as well. So I'm pretty sure we'll be learning something more about the cast soon. If it's not from Nintendo officially, probably through leaks. But so far we know who's playing, of course, Link and Zelda. And, listen, while I can't wait for this movie to come out, I'm very excited to see it day one. I will definitely be the most concerned with this movie, far more than the Mario Bros. Movie, because an animated Mario that's kind of a family friendly, more or less marketed towards kids, but adults can enjoy it as well. And you can relive the nostalgic memories and everything of the Mario franchise. Seems pretty easy to pull off. A live action Legend of Zelda movie, on the other hand, is a much more dicey undertaking, and I really hope they don't mess up any major story beats. I really hope that all the acting is top-notch quality. I think this is going to be a huge budget movie, and I think it's in competent hands, so let's hope it ends up being like the first part of a trilogy that we just all can't wait to see more of Legend of Zelda movies. But this is very much something that still has to be proven, so I'm cautiously optimistic about this one. It's such a franchise that, of course, is my favorite in gaming of all time, period. And so I don't want to see it get messed up, but at the same time, I'm very excited to learn about the new details like this that it's underway. So let me know what you think of all the different stories we talked about today. Nintendo's upgrade percentages from the Switch 1 base to the Switch 2. What do you think about that new user percentage? And do you think they worded their slide correctly, or are you in agreement with Krista on that? What do you think about Pokemon Legends ZA Mega Dimension DLC? And are you personally planning on picking it up? And what do you think about the release date being so close after the game's release date? Sonic Racing CrossWorlds, do you have it on Switch 1? Are you planning on getting it when it comes out physically on Switch 2 maybe? Or are you doing the upgrade path and you already own it on Switch 1 and you're going to Switch 2? And finally, what remakes out of the list that we walked through would you want to see? And are you excited for the Zelda movie to officially be in production like I am? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.